Not all the world's richest live in Silicon Valley. Some reside in their own dens around the world. We are talking about insanely rich criminals whose net worth will make some of our annuals look like peanuts. Drug trade, real estate scams, money laundering, illegal weaponry, and other unfathomable notoriety. These are people who found out through their own exploits that the good way is not the only way to shoot to the top. Yes, crime does pay up sometimes, but how much and for how long? We find out in this top trending list of the richest criminals of all time. Number 1. Al Capone, $100 million a year. If the name doesn't ring a bell, Al Capone was nicknamed Scarface. The gangster of barrels rose to undiluted financial stardom during the Prohibition era. Born to Italian parents in Brooklyn, New York, Capone built his empire in Chicago, Illinois. He and his organization, the Chicago Outfit, supplied bootlegged alcohol to almost every state in the United States, at a time when the transport and sale of alcohol was illegal in the country. Capone's business model solidified as his product-market fit found takers all around. At his peak in the late 1920s, Capone raked in roughly $100 million every year, which is almost equal to $1 billion today. Capone's crime story began when he moved to Chicago and became the bodyguard for Johnny Torrio, who was heading the illegal alcohol supply market at that time. After a near-death experience in a street war between rival gangs, Torrio retired and Capone took control of the business. Overambitious as he was, Capone used extremely violent methods for business expansion. He even managed to maintain a larger-than-life philanthropic figure in the public, with generous donations and cigar-chomping public appearances at ball games. But the brutally violent death of 7 rival gang members became Capone's undoing. Immediately after that, almost every important person in the state wanted to see him in jail. He was booked for tax evasion by the federal authorities, and after subsequent trials in courts, handed an 11-year sentence. Capone suffered a stroke in January 25, 1947, and died of cardiac arrest the same day. Here's some cool news. Tom Hardy is playing Al Capone in the upcoming movie Fonzo. Number 2. Susumu Ishii, $4 billion in global assets. Meet the Japanese Yakuza Don, who insisted words do more damage than bullets. Susumu Ishii was a Japanese Navy fighter pilot who was a part of the suicide kamikaze torpedo unit during World War II. He made it through the war and rose in ranks to become the second godfather of the Inigawa Kai gang. Just like his stint at the torpedo unit, Ishii pulled off miracles here too. In the 1980s, his net worth rocketed up to $4 billion, which he primarily raised through loans, international investments, and real estate scams. Ishii was not your regular gangster firing and killing at will. In fact, he avoided violence to the largest extent. He inspired the Japanese Yakuza to not resort to violence, as long as there was room for talk. He learnt much of his self-control when he was in prison between 1978 and 1984, after conviction in a gambling scam. Shortly after his release, he bought, well, rather transferred to himself, the ownership of a luxurious golf club. Japan's High and Mighty queued up for membership at the golf club to the tune of $200,000 each. Ishii's wallet was just about warming up. After the jumpstart in Japan, the Yakuza godfather went global. He invested in Korea, Hong Kong, Monaco, and the United States, and built connections so dense that at one time his group was professionally advised by George H.W. Bush's brother, Prescott Bush. After attaining such global influence, violence crept back into the Yakuza ranks. Pay off or shut down became their standard way of dealing with just about anything. In the late 80s, Ishii lost most of his money when the bubble economy burst. He died on September 3, 1991. The funeral was attended by over 6,000 people. Number 3. Leona Helmsley, $8 billion. Only little people pay taxes. It was this aphorism that identified and defined Leona Helmsley, aka the Queen of Mean. Maybe the same conviction also landed her a jail term of 11 years. But Helmsley used her influences to bottle the sentence down to 19 months nonetheless. It was estimated that in the late 1980s, Leona and her husband accumulated as much as $2 billion, largely through New York's real estate scene. At their peak, the couple owned properties like the Flatiron Building and the Empire State Building. U.S. Attorney and New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani indicted the Helmleys and a couple of their close associates on tax evasion charges in 1988. There is word that they were also charged with extortion. Giuliani asserted that the couple had used their real estate money and influence to buy luxuries like a $1 million marble dance floor and a silver dock worth $45,000 for their Connecticut home. Yes, you heard that bit right. A $1 million marble dance floor. When Leona met real estate entrepreneur Harry Helmsley in 1968, she was working as a real estate broker. A couple of years later, she was the vice president of Harry's firm, Brown Harris Stevens. She was already a millionaire by that time. Harry divorced his wife of 33 years and got married to Leona in 1972. Leona Helmsley died on August 20th, 2007, with a net worth of $8 billion. Number 4. Carlos Enrique Leder Rivas, $2.7 billion. A drug lord controlling an island, a small army of men and dogs, a fleet of airplanes, and an incredible sense of vengeance against a whole nation. Carlos Leder's story looks straight out of a Colombian movie, if they make movies of that kind there. Unlike some criminals on the list, Colombian gangster and drug lord Carlos Enrique Leder Rivas is still around, but thankfully nowhere near you. He is serving a lifetime plus 135-year sentence in the United States. Among his most infamous achievements, he was the founder of the Medellin Cartel, the conglomeration of drug barons from South America, who collectively controlled the supply of an estimated $60 million worth of illegal substances each day. Medellin Cartel was so influential that another of its founders, Jose Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha, was featured on the Forbes annual list of billionaires in 1988. Leder was hell-bent on smuggling cocaine into the United States and left no check unsigned to do it. He even bought a private jet and an entire Bahamian island, Norman Cay, to create additional routes of smuggling. Leder is said to have spent an estimated $4.5 million on the island alone. It included a yacht club, a marina, an airstrip, and almost 100 private homes. It was this island, Norman Cay, that later became Leder's main drug smuggling hub. At the height of Norman Cay's functionality, Leder earned a major part of his estimated net worth of $2.7 billion. It is said that he commanded a fleet of aircraft and the 1,000-meter-long airstrip on the island